prepare yourself for a city builder of moderately epic proportions, featuring last-gen graphics, a decided lack of the third dimension, and an original soundtrack designed by some guy named Matt. A game from the same team that brought you, well, nothing yet. In fact, it's just one guy who, despite his prolific underqualification, has a whole lot of enthusiasm. Forget Frostpunk, Anno 1800, City Skylines, with all their stylishness, complexity, and polish. The game you're going to want to play when it finally releases sometime in the next decade is Willard.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt with Nightrun Studio, and for the last 5 weeks, I've been working on the city building gameplay for my dream game, Willard.
There's a lot of great city builders out there, and I'm not even going to try to go toe-to-toe with those titans. Instead, I want to try to craft a game that's a little more intimate. A game where you don't just command hundreds of faceless peons to do your building, but instead work together with a community of unique characters where you come to truly care about every one of your citizens. I started out by prototyping the AI to get my villagers to live in the world. By live, I mean that they eat when they're hungry. They have to shop when they run out of groceries, and they have to go home and sleep when they're tired. But it was hard to think of these characters as interesting people as long as they looked like Jenga blocks dipped in finger paints. So, during my next sprint, I started adding some artwork. I brought the world to life with some buildings and environments and added some new characters. More important than any visual upgrades, however, was the meaning system. I gave my villagers a sense of purpose, which increases when they do meaningful work, decays when they feel idle, and will eventually be tied to things like relationships, work, spiritual life, and more. I also added a dialogue system. Now villagers talk as they go about their days, with different dialogue options depending on what tasks they're doing and how happy, content, sad, or depressed they're feeling. This brings me to my latest sprint. Adding characters and building systems to make this feel more like a game than just a digital goldfish tank. My very first goal was to find a way to store all the information you will learn about your villagers. On the first day, I created a menu system where you can sort through character information for each character who's joined your village. All the art's placeholder at this point, but I feel like this is a good start. Next, I created a dialogue system for interacting with NPCs. Now you can talk to and collect villagers who will show up in a toolbar on screen as well as in your character inventory. Next, I needed the ability to spawn them into the game. This part's actually pretty cool. I just created one villager object for every villager in my game, and by just changing this one little box, the villager scriptable object, I pass along all the data it needs to spawn in a unique character. The scriptable object looks like this, and it has all sorts of information, from character graphics to harvesting stats to story and character background. Now I just drop my villager object in, add the specific scriptable object for that character, and voila, a unique character appears. But I want to keep these characters unique, beyond just unique graphics and stats, so they can't just all be lumberjacks. For this, I added a job system, where each character has a list of main jobs, side jobs, and other jobs. Assigning a character to his or her main job means he'll be more skilled and will also have a greater sense of meaning. But sometimes your village just doesn't need another philosopher artist, so you have to make that poor guy go fishing. The fishing profession is my newest addition to the character states. Fishers will have to find a fishing hole, and once they have a full load, they'll bring them to these drying racks. Eventually the dried fish will be delivered to the market, but that's for later. Fishing will also play into the resource management of the game, as fishing holes can become depleted if you overfish them. This is quite different from the like button, which you can press every time you watch a video and it will never disappear. And I also gave the villagers homes. Now they know where to go for meals and to sleep at night. So now I had new characters, a new profession, and I'd built up my UI and gameplay. Now I needed a way to manage all this data. I quickly realized that making discrete files for every character was going to be hard to manage and keep track of. Up to this point, I'd been using an online wiki to keep track of all my characters and world building. This worked great as a place to store ideas, but there was no easy way to import all that data into Unity, so I found myself constantly writing stuff in the wiki, then copy-pasting it into Unity later. It wasn't terrible, but I'm doing this game alone, so I can't afford to waste that kind of time. So I did some research and a lot of tinkering, and eventually created this cool spreadsheet system. Now, all my character bios and stats are located in one file, and that file is saved right into Unity. Now, anytime I get a new character ID added to the spreadsheet, and the data is immediately available in-game. This got me thinking about my dialogue as well. As you can see here, each character has tons of dialogue data, but it's all stored in separate places and it's hard to edit with those little boxes. So I made some more spreadsheets. The first one stores all the data the villagers will say when they're roaming about the world. If they're at work and feeling happy, they'll look for dialogue that matches those conditions. Once that runs out, they'll look below to see if there's any general things they like to say when they're happy. Finally, once they run out of that dialogue, they'll look to a list of default dialogue that matches their character. For example, fisherman tycoon Byrne likes to talk about his love of the ocean. So now, this means you can follow Byrne around for a day and learn a lot about his character, a little about his story, and plenty about his personality without even engaging him in an actual conversation. That brings me to the final dialogues, which are what the characters will say when the player interacts with them. These lines are more conversational and more specific to their lives and histories.
With all that done, I'm now 5 weeks into the development of the city building side of Willard. Next up, I've got 2 goals. I want to add more things for the characters to do in their day, further develop their core systems like meaning, rest, and hunger. But I also want to make this feel more like a real game. I think it's time I added the ability to actually create and add buildings to the level. Anyways, thanks for taking the time to watch. Until next time, this is Matt with Nightrun Studio. Cheers.